Hello and welcome. This is my wife Mary and I'm Ed, and we are Branch Davidian Seventh-Day Adventists. We are excited you're joining us today. We present or expound on a principle or belief related to the SDA Sabbath School Quarterly each week. This fourth quarter of 2018 deals with the topic of unity, a subject of supreme interest to the Seventh-day Adventist Church as schisms over ideologies and doctrines are abounding. This week's lesson is on reconciliation in relationships.
The memory verse for this week is Romans 5:10. It says, "For if when we were enemies we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life." Reconciled in this verse is Strong's G2644, katalasso, and it means to change mutually, i.e. figuratively, to compound a difference, reconcile. To have a reconciliation, as we can see by the definition of the word, there must be a mutual change, a compound difference.
When two parties are at odds with each other, there must be an effort made on both ends. This may seem strange because usually when there is a rift between two parties, each puts the responsibility on the other for there to be peace.
But God made the first move to reconcile with us. Romans 5:6 says, "For when we were still without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet perhaps for a good man someone would even dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love towards us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us."
So here we can see that there is a rift between the ungodly, that is us, and God. If we are committing sins, we are enemies of God, right?
Verse 10 says, "For if when we were enemies we were reconciled to God through the death of his Son, much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life."
So Jesus and the Father had some enemies to deal with. That would be us, if we had even one cherished sin. So God decided to give us a gift, his Son. And Jesus purposed to give up all and come down to earth, suffer at our hands, and endure the death of a cross because of our sinfulness. He did this to show us the deceitfulness of sin, to open our eyes to the truth of what we were cherishing in our hearts. This was their gift to us. It's a free gift.
But reconciliation is a compound transaction, a mutual effort on the part of the parties on both sides of an issue. So we can see in Romans that we have two parties involved, Christ and the ungodly. Christ selflessly offered us his life as an example to us. Now it is our turn to respond. What are we going to do? Will we receive the gift and live a life like the one Jesus led? Will we follow the pattern he laid out for us, the pattern that cost him so much pain and suffering and humiliation? Will we, like Paul, become a slave of Jesus Christ, a slave, as Romans 6:16 says, of obedience leading to righteousness? Will we do our part in the process of reconciliation? Because only then can we have true and full reconciliation with heaven. That is what reconciliation means. It's a transaction between both parties.
If only one side is selfless and the other side does not reciprocate, then we all know that there is no reconciliation in the relationship. It must be two-sided. In order for us to be reconciled to God, we have to do something. Remember, verse 5:10 says, "We are saved by his life," a selfless, sinless life. The gift of Jesus' life experience should open our eyes to the horror of sin. So we turn to a selfless, sinless life and live.
Ellen White said this, "Why not then be reconciled to God?" Now here is our part in the deal. She tells us, "Die to self and be converted, that Jesus may heal you. He wants to save you if you will consent to be saved in his appointed way. May the Lord help you to see and correct every error."
How are we to be saved in his appointed way?
Ellen White says that it is to have the Lord help you see and correct every error. Just like we have said in the past, to be made righteous is to be made right through correction.
If we need to be made right, that is because we were wrong and need correction. We must learn to love correction if we are to be made righteous and be saved. Again, as our memory verse in Romans 5:10 says, by his life.
By living the same life that Christ did for us, we can be saved. There's no other way, and we need to live that way for others also to reconcile with them as well. Love God and love your neighbor. Matthew 22:37-40 says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind." That is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments.
So reconciliation is an agreement between two parties. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is a little different.
Forgiveness is something you can do, independent of the other party.
If someone wrongs us, how should we respond?
Well, Trent Wilde, who is the present-day prophet to our church, once helped me understand forgiveness better. He said, when you forgive, you give for. Give for. When you forgive, you give something for the other person. You give them your love, your patience, your kindness, and the truth. You give them the truth and the love in the hope of restoring the relationship.
Now, the effect of your forgiveness is totally dependent on the other party. Have they sincerely repented? Have they become a changed person that will sin no more against you? If so, you can have reconciliation. But if they are not repentant, the relationship cannot be restored, but we should still hold no grudge against them.
God held no grudge against us while we were yet sinners, so we can still give them our love and affection, but only to the degree that they can receive it. It is possible that you may have to leave them alone because they do not want to reconcile. To leave them alone in some cases may be a loving act. We do want to contrast this idea of forgiveness, that forgiveness is to selflessly give for the other person, to give for them your love, to give for them the truth, to give for them, not for you, with the worldly idea of forgiveness, which is focused on the benefit you can gain for yourself. You may benefit from all this giving, of course you will, but it should not come from a self-centered motive. I watched many worldly videos on forgiveness, and all of them that I saw, even the evangelical ones, focused on forgiveness being for your own sake, to get rid of your own stress and bitterness, encouraging you to let go of negativity for your own mental health. It was a very self-centered approach. This type of forgiveness for your own sake is not the giving for the other person, but for yourself.
And lastly, we must always remember that God only sees you as you are in truth and reality. If you have bitterness in your heart, he sees you as bitter. If you have hate in your heart, he sees you as a murderer. To put on the righteousness of Christ is to be righteous like Christ. It is not a fake righteousness, where you continue to sin, but God sees you as sinless. That would be a lie, because to see you as sinless, if you are not, is simply not the truth. And God is truth, so that wouldn't really work.
And this is clearly illustrated in Zechariah 3. It says, Now Joshua was dressed in filthy clothes as he stood before the angel. The angel said to those who were standing before him, Take off his filthy clothes. Then he said to Joshua, See, I have taken away your sin, and I will put rich garments on you. Then I said, Put a clean turban on his head. So they put a clean turban on his head and clothed him, while the angel of the Lord stood by. The angel of the Lord gave this charge to Joshua. This is what the Lord Almighty says. If you will walk in my ways and keep my requirements, then you will govern my house and have charge of my courts, and I will give you a place among these standing here. Listen, O high priest Joshua, and your associates seated before you, who are men symbolic of things to come. I am going to bring my servant, the branch.
Notice that Joshua did not have a clean garment put on top of his filthy garment to cover it up. No, the filthy garment, representing sin, had to be first taken off. Then a clean garment representing the righteousness of Christ was put on him.
Notice also Joshua has associates seated before him that will also get this garment change, a symbol of a born-again sinless life, and that God's servant that he brings to us is none other than Jesus Christ the branch. This is a beautiful depiction of the purified church to come, hopefully soon, if we can just grasp these truths and be changed.
Amen. Thank you for staying with us through the entire video. We invite you to visit our website, www.bdsda.com, to learn more about who we are and, just as important, who we are not. Please join us each week as we will continue to offer new and interesting insights for your Sabbath School studies. God bless.
Many blessings.